I want your thoughts on this. Is it time to ration water? 027 86222, that's the number. 5 parts of the UK are officially in drought. And England's reservoir levels fell in July compared to June, which was the 5th warmest June on record. We also had the driest spring since 1893. More than 8.5 million households are now under a hosepipe ban. But if we cast our minds back to the Great Drought of 1976, even tougher rules were in place in some areas. The mains water supply was actually switched off for up to 17 hours a day, and standpipes were in the streets. They're being used to dispense water with 1 tap for every 20 houses. They also use the slogan, "Save water, bath with a friend." Do you remember the Great Drought, Mike, of 1976?
Yeah, I do, because it was a political fiasco. The Prime Minister, James Callaghan, appointed a minister as Minister for Drought, Dennis Howell. Oh, yeah. But the problem was, the next day, the heavens opened and we had floods. So Dennis Howell was immediately reappointed Minister for Floods, OK? It's not a fiasco, but it does illustrate the problem in this country with us trying to preserve our water, right?
Yep.
Now, I want to show you this headline
from
a newspaper this morning. Cost of first reservoir in 30 years trebles to 7.5 billion. That just about sums up the dire situation we have in this country, trying to collect water, preserve water, and distribute water fairly to those people who pay for it.
You know, Stella, people just don't understand it, and I'm like everybody else is one of them. I mean, you know, you are British, you come from Greece. One of the things I suspect your families are still in Greece say is that, oh, the thing about England, it's wet all the time. And yet we can't seem to make it work.
No, we can't.
And, you know, I wonder to what extent you kind of understand this. Why are we so, for want of a better way of putting it, rubbish at preserving, protecting and defending our one resource that we definitely need? And every time a little bit of sun comes out, it's a disaster.
So glad you asked. It's because Thatcher privatised the water industry. And
well, hang on, but the Great Drought of 1976, it was in public ownership.
Of course it was, yeah. And look, we've got loads of water in this country.
Public ownership had its problems. We haven't built enough reservoirs. That's a problem. We haven't invested enough in our water systems.
Agree.
There is no reason why a country like the UK, with the amount of rain that we have, we should never have a problem.
So why wasn't regulation put into the rules when the water companies were privatised? They should have said, and you've got to build a reservoir.
There was regulation in place, and there was a body which clearly did not do its job correctly. But you have the inherent problem that there is simply no motivation for a privatised company to not just pay out its shareholders.
Now, given where we are, right, which is whether there's been investment or not, there clearly hasn't. You're basically agreeing about this. Situation is dire. We've got lots of parts of Britain at the moment in hosepipe bans. It is getting more severe as the weather gets hotter. Question is, would you support rationing water in order to protect what little is left or not?
Not at this stage, and I will tell you why I would support it, because I think that in these situations, very often what you have is the people who were already being cautious or already not using too much are being punished, whereas those who are probably wasting the most are not. It's the same thing with recycling, for example. While you are washing your yogurt your yogurt pot to recycle it, you have Jeff Bezos having his massive wedding in Venice, going everywhere in a private jet. So people are eventually becoming cynical.
Well, let's go to Emily in London. Rationing water. Would you do it? Do you think it's time that everybody did, given that supply, to say the least, at the moment is limited?
Can I just quickly say I do, our water's very precious, and I genuinely do, I think, probably more than the average. But what makes me wild, if I could just relay a quick story, happened actually 2 days ago.
Yes.
I'm strolling through, because it's another example of do as I say, not what I do.
Right.
I'm strolling through a local housing association estate, one beginning with P, ends in Y, first name George.
Don't worry about that. Yeah, go on, just tell us what happened.
And 4 hose pipes going at full pelt to do their loosely called lawn, which had no flowers. One of them was being used by the kids as a joint water pistol. The other one had gone off grid and was watering the pavement. And the other one wasn't doing anything and was just laying there spilling out water.
But why did that make you... To just help us, why did that make you wild? Why did that make you cross?
Because it's a blatant waste of water by an association like the government that has all these environmental pledges, and then they're telling individuals to sort of like, you know, I believe in saving water. It's precious. But
right, so not rationing, but Emily, you say people should be more careful, and not just that housing association, but wherever you are, it's a precious resource and we shouldn't waste it, is the point you're making. There are lots of parts of the country, an example that you've given us where you say people are completely indifferent to water waste, and that is part of the problem, in addition to what we're talking about here, about the absence of looking after our resource and making sure that there's enough for everybody. Thank you, Emily in London. John, you're in Birmingham. What do you think? Do you think we should be rationing water now?
Absolutely not. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, John.
No,
why not?
Because the water companies themselves have caused the problem.
I agree.
They were privatised nearly 40 years ago, and for 40 years they've gone on. They haven't done their job at all.
We haven't even mentioned, by the way, that they lose billions of litres of water every week through pipes which are rusting and faulty and not fit for purpose. Another thing the water companies are not invested in.
Yeah, and of course, on top of that, we've all got our views of the water companies. I'm going to come to you about this study. You know, one of the things that is very popular, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, is the renationalisation of water companies. There's only one set of waterways. You'll be aware not just about drought, but also toxic leaks into our shared water system. And a number of those 13 companies gave themselves sort of massive bonuses. Mike talks about the fact that there are leaks from reservoirs. You know, is this an example of privatisation being a disaster, which frankly means we find ourselves having this conversation today about whether water should be rationed? This is failure by the companies, is what you say.
Yes, absolutely. There should be some industries, and I'm not in favour of nationalising everything arbitrarily and at whatever point in time you want, because there are genuine problems with doing this arbitrarily for certain industries. But it is, I think it makes sense to the average person that our water, things like our water, should be public. They should be under public ownership, because it is something. It is important for us, for our security, for our safety, for our comfort, that we all have access to water in a safe and sustainable way.
Yeah, one of the issues, though, Mike brings up the Great Drought of 1976. You know, so before we talked about global warming, is that, as we talked about, that was in public ownership. They still couldn't get it right. So what's the best way of securing this so that we don't end up rationing water?
Well, what we've got to do these days is, first of all, why on earth would you privatise a monopoly? It's ridiculous. Privatisation is supposed to bring in competition for competing services, right? So I totally agree with that. What I would do is I would not renationalise, because we have a horrendous history of nationalisation in this country.
Also very difficult and expensive to do.
Difficult and expensive, and generally speaking, very inefficient. But I would scrap Ofwat and I would replace it with a body that introduced new set of rules so that a percentage of the profits have to go to repairing the pipes, have to go to building reservoirs, and have to go to keeping prices down and not paying directors billions in dividends.
Just to be clear, I've looked into a number of the Ofwat regulations. Actually, already that is a requirement, but I think the point that you would make is that that's frankly not enough. We shouldn't be playing investors. Actually, that should, like in Switzerland, for example, the regions own the various water companies. They are independent, but nevertheless, the main thing is that gets invested back into the community. John, these are big picture ways of thinking about how we can make sure that this doesn't happen. But the reality out there is that there are hosepipe bans and water is depleting. So the question for us is it time to ration water so that everybody's got enough? What do you think, John, in Birmingham? John? I think John's got to go to Derek in Northampton, so forgive me. I meant to go to Northampton. I was having a leaky brain. What do you think, Derek?
Oh, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
The first thought that comes to my mind is that if water was rationed, it could have consequences for public health.
Right.
As a result of less sanitation, and there could be concerns about public health issues if water was rationed because of rationing. But then I think people may ration water themselves because of the high cost of water bills that will actually result in people using less water anyway.
No, it's an interesting point, Derek, and of course I suspect was one of the worries in 1976 about sanitisation. But the point that's also being made is that people sometimes ration water themselves.
Yeah, but Derek's got a very good point there. We are a wet country. I don't understand why years ago we didn't introduce a rule to have a water butt built with every new home, because the water runs off the roofs in this country. We have V-shaped roofs. The water runs off down the pipe into the water butt, wash your car and water your garden with rainwater.
And you certainly see them in a number of dry countries. I'm looking towards you, Stella, but you'll be aware of in hotter parts, certainly of the islands of Greece, often that's absolutely a necessary part of the build.
In Greece, on the islands, we have reservoirs on every house. On top of every house, there is a reservoir.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, something to think of, I mean, especially with a country as rainy as ours. Derek in Northamptonshire, nice to speak to you. Can I go to Beverley in Cheshire, please? Tell us, do you think it's time to ration water, Beverley?
Good morning. It's not so much rationing. I'm phoning actually because of the mess that we're in. And for instance, the Thames Water, they are billions in debt. And that is because the executives have leaked or leached the profits. Why can't they claw back all that money or some of the money? Because it is absolutely appalling that it was allowed to happen and we're now in this mess.
Yeah, Beverley, this is where my journalistic let's say, impartiality is very difficult to maintain, because I have to say, I think, like many people, the whole panel agrees with you. The difficulty is that this has been set up in such a way where they are legally bound, because there are private investors and shareholders, etc., to pay that money to the people who invest in it. So they can't claw the money back. But you raise a really important point of shared frustration across the country. The question is, what will happen moving forward?
And 60% of that money has gone abroad anyway. I'm not saying you can't claim money even if you could abroad, but it's gone into banks abroad. That money's just disappeared. But as you quite rightly say, it was set up so badly that the shareholders legally were entitled to draw the dividends. It's just the dividends were huge.
Right, you agree with that as well, presumably, Stella?
I'm very pleased to hear Mike saying that. It's absolutely corrupt and they should be ashamed of themselves.
It's corrupt in your view?
It is corrupt, yeah, it is corrupt. How do you think they couldn't see that this was happening? They couldn't understand, oh, wait a minute, we are making all of this profit, we are sharing the dividends out to our shareholders.
I don't think you can call it corrupt, to be honest. I think you call it faulty. Right. It's a really faulty system. But, you know, nobody's got into it illegally. It's just that it was set up so badly.
Right. Well, Edward, you're in Merseyside. Water's running out, hosepipe bans everywhere. It appears as soon as the sun comes out, we're told by government it's time to put the hosepipe away, despite this being one of the wettest countries in Europe, despite global warming. What do you think of it? Do you think it's time to ration water, or do you think this is outrageous?
Oh, I think the biggest side of this that nobody seems to mention is that sanitation takes the most. Right. We've nearly doubled the population. Also, the Duke of Edinburgh many, many moons ago put a prize out for anybody that could come up with an idea to save sending 3 litres of water down the toilet pan to save water. It was never done, and it still goes on today. But if you double the population, and not only the drinking water and everything else, and the washing and thing that goes with it, and the wash places that cleaning cars and the whole likes.
It's going to be hard.
Just about the population now. The population has near doubled.
Right. So your point is this is a precious resource. It's not about rationing, but a number of our callers saying the same thing. We need to be mindful of how we use water, and like anything else, it's a shared resource, not to waste it. At the same time, conversation taking place here, which is clear, and a rare arena of agreement saying it's about time that we don't find ourselves in the situation where we're asking this question at all. A rainy country, the companies, however they're set up, definitely need to do better. Thank you, Edward. Later, it's the papers and everything else. Find out why Foreign Secretary David Lammy referred himself to a watchdog. It's probably not what you're actually expecting, but in a moment we want your calls on whether you should offer your builder a cup of tea.